You know, a stroke is well named. For 1 minute, you can be perfectly healthy, hale and hearty. And then, out of the blue, you have a stroke. Initially, some people tend to be disorientated. Others are aware of a lack of power in their limbs. Some people slur their speech and find it difficult to follow conversations or find the right words to express themselves. Well, these communication difficulties, together with certain physical disabilities, can easily lead to anger and frustration.
His writing was all mixed up as well as his speech. And he would point and he'd say, "But I don't understand." And he'd look at it and say, "Well, I know perfectly what that says." And of course he found that difficult, that we couldn't understand what he was saying or trying to tell us. But we got there in the end, didn't we? With a lot of hard work.
I just feel frustrated, I think, in general, you know, that's because I can't do as much as I used to, particularly without my left arm.
Physically, I still can't do what I could do previously, because I played rugby up until about 6 years ago. You know, I was playing rugby at 50, and I used to I was going to the gym 3 times a week, and I was swimming on a Sunday, not every Sunday, but you know, twice a month, you know, perhaps 50 or 60 lengths. So to have a stroke was, the doctor wondered why it was me. So did I. I think most people do.
When I had the first stroke, the worst thing for me was when I found I couldn't work anymore.
Yeah, it devastates your life, there's no question about that.
If you've had a stroke, well, you know that the sense of shock is a very deep one. In fact, some people have described it as though a part of them has died. And it's perfectly natural to be angry and to ask, why me? And be frustrated at this seeming inability to do things that once came as second nature. And a stroke doesn't just affect one person. It can affect the lives of the whole family.
It was quite frightening at first, because she'd always been active and independent, and at that time you don't realise how much she's going to improve, and you try and envisage what life will be like if she's going to be completely dependent, where she would live, just how she could cope generally with life.
You're going to have to make changes. That's one thing that's, you know, definite. You're going to have to do, like, and a lot of the changes you make, you just make the decision as you're going along.
If you're taking on a close relative who's had a stroke, you have to be very, very certain in your own mind that that is what you want to do, that you want to bring them into your own home.
But your whole life does change. That's without a doubt, like, you know, and you've got to look at things. I think you've got to plan more in advance of what you're doing. You don't do you don't do things in a hurry.
You have to be very certain and have a reasonably good relationship to be able to cope with the attendant pressures. Let's put it that way.
Caring for someone after a stroke can take a lot of getting used to. Relationships can change. And always at the back of everyone's mind is the question, how will I cope? Well, one way is to look at a stroke, maybe not as an ending, but maybe as a challenging new beginning.